One of my lifetime goals is to read all of Proust, which, as I say it, might be the most pretentious thing I have ever said from this bema. His magnum opus, In Search of Lost Time, is a beast. 7 thick volumes, arguably the longest single significant literary work in the Western canon. I'm 4 volumes in. One of the biggest surprises of reading the book was that there are dozens and dozens of pages where pretentious social climbers and arrogant bores talk endlessly at dinner parties about the Dreyfus affair. Everyone seems to have an opinion, and people are passionate. For those who don't know what the Dreyfus affair is, a quick primer. In 1894, someone discovered a note in a trash can that proved that someone in the French army was spying for the Germans. With little more than a hunch, Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish captain in the French army, was brought up on trumped-up charges and convicted. Quickly, his story captured the French imagination and split society, with some believing in his innocence and some claiming his guilt. It uncovered a lot of latent anti-Semitism in France, and it was arguably one of the chief catalysts for a new movement among Jews that we know today as Zionism. Although I was first surprised to see this court case at the center of what many believed to be the greatest novel ever written, I shouldn't have been. There are events that supersede their moment, that everyone has an opinion on, that carry the weight of society on their shoulders. The Dreyfus affair was everywhere. As one writer explained, reflecting on the way rural backwaters in Germany related to the scandal, quote, "It is incredible how the question has whipped up feelings even in the lowest classes. Often the farmers come to the post office late in the evening to pick up the local papers and read the news of the trial rather than waiting to get them in the morning." The Dreyfus affair tore families apart, ended friendships, sunk careers, created new movements and organizations, and captured the public's imagination. Does this sound familiar? There are no shortage of hot takes trying to relate some historical event to the Gaza war. Often these types of analogies break down when you really unpack them. But there is truth in the statement often attributed to Mark Twain that, quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." And there is no moment I can think of that better rhymes with this current moment, especially as it pertains to the discourse we use to discuss Israel and Gaza, than 1890s France. I've never seen us more divided, more conflicted, more broken as a community, a country, a world. Since the conflict began, I've lost congregants to my left and to my right. Where last year I gave a centrist sermon on Israel and everyone heard a little of what they needed, understanding that they may not agree with everything, this year feels the opposite. It seems that people are looking for the views they don't agree with as a litmus test for whether Temple Ner Tamid speaks their values. Tonight, I want to unpack this current moment and the ways that we talk about Gaza, not by addressing the war directly, but by examining the absurdity of the Dreyfus affair and using it to reflect back on our own era, on what is so broken about the way that we approach the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Perhaps more than anything, the tragedy of the Dreyfus affair is that one man's court trial somehow became the seat of every grievance of every citizen in France. Quickly, 2 camps arose. Those that thought Dreyfus was guilty had plenty of anti-Semitism, but they also tended to be Catholic, pro-military, anti-Enlightenment, pro-monarchy, and extremely suspects of the Germans. By contrast, those that supported Dreyfus were the opposite. Their coalition included Jews and Protestants, embraced Enlightenment ideals, believed in democracy over monarchy, were less isolationists, and even willing to entertain conversations about socialism. Some even held anti-Semitic views themselves, but allied with others in support of Dreyfus because of the other things that their movement stood for. Now, if you're trying to figure out which camp is the pro-Israel and the pro-Palestinian camp in this exercise, please don't. There will be aspects of this that remind you of the current moment, but the Dreyfus affair and the Dreyfus era is not a perfect parallel. What is parallel is the fact that just as then, there are a lot of factors muddying our conversation. Israel is a country with its share of problems, but it cannot and it should not be used to make Americans feel better about our own history of colonialism or civil rights legacy. Israel needs to be judged on its own terms. It is not the seat to try past wrongs. At the same time, those of us who love Israel need to also bring open eyes to this current moment. We are in this war because of Hamas. I hold them 100% responsible for the fact that we were originally put in this position. Hamas routinely uses its citizens as human shields. They are evil incarnate. But Hamas is not responsible for each and every military decision on the part of Israel. Those decisions need to be judged on their own terms. I've seen people who refuse to speak out, either in defense or in critique, because they worry it might ally them with, quote, the wrong people. Or they worry it's going to fuel anti-Semitism. Or they hold grievances from 2005 or 2000 or 1987 or 1967 or 1948. And those color their ability to see what is unfolding before them with fresh eyes. This war can be about many things, but it cannot be a platform for ultra-Orthodox messianic aspirations, a political shield and a lifeline for a flailing prime minister, a proxy battle for the American culture wars, or a referendum on the media. One critique I've gotten from people, as I've asked them to make their own judgments about this war, is that we don't always know where to turn to for facts. How, they ask, can I even hold views if I don't know who to trust to tell me what is actually happening? I don't know if it's comforting, but you're not alone in this feeling. In fact, this mistrust of information was one of the hallmarks of the Dreyfus era. Not only was there a ton of misinformation swirling around, but people contorted the truth to fit their narrative. Dreyfus must be guilty because he didn't look upset enough at his trial. Or since Dreyfus's hands shook in fear when they took a handwriting sample to compare it to the treasonous note, he must be good at disguising his handwriting. Or because Dreyfus rose so quickly in the ranks before the affair due to his intelligence rather than his military achievement, he's the exact kind of person who would dabble in espionage. I'm not going to pretend today that people are all intellectually honest when it comes to Israel. There's a lot of misinformation out there. But just because the truth is harder to find does not mean that we should stop looking for it. Just because the New York Times publishes a misleading picture of a child with cerebral palsy on its cover does not mean that all accounts of hunger are also fabricated. And when the UN fails to deliver food to Gaza provided to them by Israel, we need to stop. And rather than be relieved that the hunger crisis is not all on us, we should ask with curiosity what facts on the ground are keeping them from delivering the food. It might be the safety of its workers, impassable roads, even incompetence. Not everything that makes Israel look bad is done with malice, even if it's a more comforting narrative to hold. That isn't to say that there isn't a lot of propaganda around. I've seen gruesome pictures of this crisis that were later proven to have been recycled from other war zones. I've seen memes where casualty numbers run nearly 500,000. I've watched quotes by outlier politicians bandied about as official Israeli state policy. But I refuse to fight propaganda with propaganda. Many people see truth as a scale. It seems that the whole society is anti-Israel, then our job is to occupy the other side, giving no light to their arguments so we can balance them out. Maybe even giving our own spin, presenting our own misinformation to counter theirs. But I don't think that view is intellectually honest. I'm going to stay in the middle. I will agree with my detractors where I do and disagree where I must. I truly believe in Dr. Martin Luther King's teaching that, quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Time will show that holding firm to one's views, even if they sometimes contradict, even if they don't fit neatly into a narrative, even if they mix loving critique and passionate defense, that is the path to integrity. One of the great tragedies of the Dreyfus era, and our own, is that everything I have mentioned, the social pressures that shape our views, the clannishness, the misinformation, the propaganda wars, have lost the human element to this conflict. Dreyfus was a person. He had a wife. She grieved for him. He had a brother. He fought for him. He had a community, and they were scared by what was happening to him. Israelis and Palestinians are people first. I worry all the time that the world will no longer see the humanity of the Israeli people. Israelis still haven't recovered from October 7th. Life is still somewhat frozen even as people march forward. The specter of the hostages is everywhere. This summer, the world largely remained silent as images of a starving Eviatar David surfaced. Eviatar is not a symbol. He's not a sacrifice. He's not a movement. He is a person, a human being with a brother who once described him this way, quote, I play the piano and he plays the guitar. We had a tradition. We played music every week together at my parents' till October 7th. He's also shy, but also full of life. I learned how to be a good son from him. He's such a good son to my parents. Every Israeli affected by October 7th and its aftermath, every hostage, every grieving parent, every child who has to step into a bomb shelter is a person with a story worthy of our empathy and love. But they are often forgotten in their heartache and pain. In an effort to condemn Israel as a whole, we lose the beauty of the particulars that make up this country. But just as I want this for my Israeli brothers and sisters, I seek this for my Palestinian kin across the border. Palestinians are not numbers. They too are sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, parents, uncles, aunts, and grandparents. Whether you feel a particular military action is justified or not, should not keep your heart from breaking when a child dies. Two things can be true at the same time. One, Hamas is evil and should never be allowed to carry out another October 7th. And two, no group of people should have to invent the acronym WCNSF, used for the first time in this war, and meant to stand for Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. In my love for Israel, I can tell you the names of many of the hostages. I pray daily for Ariel and Kafir Bibas. It doesn't take away anything from their memory to also know the name and the story of Hind Rajab, a 6-year-old girl of a similar age whose car was hit by an errant tank shot. As the lone survivor, she found her uncle's phone and she called for help, only to die before aid could arrive. Empathy is not a zero-sum game. This moment hurts. And so many times we have wanted to look away. But in our quest to protect our hearts, we must be careful not to let them harden. This brings me to my final parallel between this moment and that of Dreyfus. Even among the pro-Dreyfus camp, there was a tremendous amount of discord. People, all of whom were on the same side, tore each other apart about the smallest things. Would Dreyfus be pardoned or acquitted? Should the military face censure for his imprisonment or not? Should his case be used as a springboard to address other injustices or just stand on its own? Freud once coined the phrase the narcissism of marginal difference to talk about how we are often the meanest to those who fall just short of our expectations. And I've too seen this in this moment. I've watched people who love Israel, who wear Zionism on their sleeve, bicker over how the food crisis in Gaza is labeled. Is it hunger or famine? Which mainstream newspapers are worth quoting, whether we pray for the hostages before or after we critique Israel. The Jewish community is tearing itself apart over Gaza. I've been called a self-hating Jew in the press after I published an op-ed calling for a ceasefire this summer. I've been told that my moderate stance is especially dangerous because it gives a veneer of level-headedness while I slowly erode trust in Israel. We are capable of disagreeing without ad hominem attacks, without ending friendships, without leaving the synagogue. I don't know what the future will hold for Israel, for Gaza, for American Jewry, for civil discourse. But I do know that crises are often the catalysts for opportunity and transformative growth. Who would have guessed that the toxicity of the Dreyfus era would lead to the birth of Zionism and the miracle of Israel? And if our era is just as broken, just as toxic, just as polarized, maybe, just maybe, it too will be a catalyst for something better as well. I don't know how we will get there, but I believe one day we will. This war will end, and our Israeli and Palestinian brothers and sisters will tiptoe toward peace. And this episode, too, will feel as distant to us as the Dreyfus affair, because the world will look so different, provided we have the strength to turn our current moment into a lesson of history.